And we begin this hour with the vicious fighting in the Middle East after Israel launched a wave of airstrikes yesterday, killing 560 people nearly in Lebanon. The Israeli military says the target was the militant group Hezbollah, which has fired thousands of rockets into Israel since the start of the war in Gaza. The U.S. is now sending additional troops to the region and warning Americans still in Lebanon to leave if possible. To help us understand the situation, we are now joined by Samantha Vinograd, a CBS News national security contributor and former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at DHS. Good morning, Sam. So glad you're with us on a morning like today. It seems like this just continues to escalate with more airstrikes in different parts of the border with Israel. Explain to us what the latest situation is in your reaction.
Well, Israel and Hezbollah have both been redefining what is off limits since October 7th from a targeting perspective. Just for context, since the mid-1980s, Hezbollah has been calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. After October 7th, Hezbollah upped the level of its cross-border strikes into Israel, supposedly in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Since that time, cross-border strikes have certainly escalated, and more recently, Israel has launched targeted airstrikes into Beirut, into the capital, with mass civilian casualties, and Hezbollah has been launching strikes at a broader range of targets in Israel and much further into Israeli territory.
For context here, though, Hamas terrorists invade Israel on October 7th, almost a year ago, and then Hezbollah starts firing rockets in the north, a whole different part of the country. Tens of thousands of Israelis haven't been able to go back home since then. And now you have all this fighting. It's very difficult for Lebanese citizens. Why does Hezbollah, which also has a role in politics and in public services in Lebanon, why is it doing this to its own people? Why did it get involved in something that was between Israel and Hamas?
Well, as I mentioned, Hezbollah has been focused on the destruction of the state of Israel since the mid-1980s. It is a designated foreign terrorist organization, in addition to being a political force within Lebanon. Hezbollah has been attacking Israel since the mid-1980s, and there's been a series of conflicts between the two countries. But, Tony, Hezbollah is a very sophisticated fighting force. They have a huge arsenal of weapons, they are highly trained, and they have the backing of the regime in Iran, like Hamas does. But Hezbollah is a highly sophisticated fighting force that would present a challenge to the state of Israel if Israel did escalate further by launching a ground operation in Lebanon.
When I was in Israel reporting on the aftermath of the war, before the counter-invasion of Gaza, the IDF was telling me that the Hamas fight is like a fly and Hezbollah is like an elephant. They just militarily are on a whole other scale.
Yeah, and as Tony mentioned, it is widening regionally. But do you believe that this could escalate to an even larger scale war, which is the worry of the surrounding parties?
Well, it is already a regional conflict. Israel and Iran have traded direct strikes. Iran has activated its proxies all over the region. What the U.S. is seeking to avoid is Israel launching a ground operation in Lebanon and a direct confrontation between Israel and another country, another nation state in the region. And that's why the U.S. has sent additional troops and is working both diplomatic channels and trying to deter both Israel and Iran and its proxies from escalating further.
So the president's going to talk at the UN later today. Are things going to be solved by tomorrow?
I don't think President Biden will find an off switch at the UN General Assembly. I think instead there is behind-the-scenes activity to try to convince the government of Lebanon, as well as Iran and the proxies it supports, that escalating further will not end well.
Yeah, the off-switch search is really, we're fumbling around in the dark looking for that switch.
Yeah.
The world is.
And the U.S. has been trying to help diplomatically, but, like we reported, they have sent some troops to the region, additional troops. Could that be a slippery slope? How much more can the U.S. get pulled into this conflict?
Well, we are already pulled in. We came to Israel's defense when there was a barrage of aerial assets directed at Israel. The forces that are in the Middle East, the additional forces, are meant to help provide for Israel's security, to deter further escalation, and also to come to the defense of U.S. citizens if they need it, both American forces, American diplomats, and American civilians. There are a lot of dual citizens living in countries like Lebanon if the situation escalates further.
Samantha, thank you so much for this context.